Evangelicals, Catholics alike for that matter, Christians of all forms, true Christians, cannot afford to pretend that the DEI movement is anything but a false god. It's a false god of iconography. It's a false god of human wisdom, that we know what's equitable. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. It's not wisdom of itself. It's like this. Information is not power. Information is potential power. It's when you put it to use that it becomes power. Fear of the Lord is great. Proper fear. It doesn't mean that you're going to be terrified of this sky elf who's lurking around the corner waiting for you to make a mistake so he can trick you into going to hell. It's to fear disappointing Father God who loves you, who gave you life, who pursues you, even at the cost of sending his only begotten son to be tortured and they attempted to belittle him and to die this horrible death. It's to fear disappointing him. Fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, because once you fear the Lord, you can begin to take the Lord's words into account and act like a wise man who builds his house on rock versus sand. That's taking fear, putting it into action by using the wisdom of the Lord. Micah Smith is COO of an organization called Be the Bridge, and he has a contention for Trump supporters after the presidential election, something he wants us all to know, and he seems to want to shame us. Play that in a second. I'm having this morning, this would be, my 12th, 24. This is Alex is laughing, my producer Alex. This is my 32nd ounce of Bone Frog coffee this morning. This happens to be, what do we have downstairs? Goat Locker. Oh, so the Goat Locker is a great, great story from Bone Frog Coffee. The Goat Locker is a place where enlisted officers in the Navy can go, and the big wigs, they can't even come in without knocking. It's a great, great, great tradition. And this is a light roast, French roast, light, but incredibly rich. It took 3 years to develop this. That's at bonefrogcoffee.com/Todd. Get 10% off all the products there. Everything comes labeled God Country Team. Now, in this hand is a pretend, is it snifter? What do y'all wine people drink? What's the fancy wine things called? Like wine glass? I don't know. It's a fancy wine glass. In this hand, a fake one, because I don't drink wine. But if I did drink wine, it would have Bone Frog Cellars in it. I would go, and I'd swish it around, and that's called legs. Does it have legs? I learned this from my friends who are wine snobs, wine experts. It has legs. And then I would test the bouquet, like sniffing it up my beak. You can do that with coffee, too. You can also do that with root beer. You can do that with a bologna sandwich. I don't know why people do it with wine, but they do. That's what you do. Then you take a little bit of it, and you drink it. You put it in your mouth, but then you open your mouth and your nose, and you breathe through as you're testing the wine. I think you do that in a little bit more erudite form, a little bit more genteel. See, I don't drink wine, but I turn to my friends who are wine experts, and they tried Bone Frog Cellars and were deeply impressed. They had the 2015 Merlot and Cabernet. Those are the two, I don't know if I say flavors or blends, I don't know, types of wine. My daughter tried it. She is not yet legally supposed to drink, but hey, it's our house, so sue me. Well, don't, but I guess you could. She loved it, so did her boyfriend. My wife occasionally has wine with dinner. She really enjoyed it, so try it. Go to bonefrogcellars.com/Todd. You get 10% off all the wines there. 10% of proceeds go to the Navy SEAL Foundation because the founder, Tim Cruikshank, look at that, retired Navy SEAL. bonefrogcellars.com/Todd. Here is Micah Smith with a message to us. He's the COO of Be the Bridge.
And it feels like people who look like me especially.
Okay, so right there, you've lost all credibility. When your statement starts with the melanin level in your skin and the color of your hair and eyes, you have instantly said, please ignore everything I'm about to say because it comes from a perspective of racism.
White men and women, they decided to sell out our ideals over the price of eggs.
Okay, so let's pause. Micah, support for President Trump went up among black men and black women and Hispanic men and Hispanic women. It went up among Native Americans. It went up among Jewish people. It went up amongst Muslims. So we're all clear, Micah.
And I know that there's lots of different reasons that people voted and claim to have voted.
Okay, claim to have voted. There are. He's going to get into some of these reasons because he understands this dynamic very, very well. Let's listen very closely to Micah Smith.
But when it comes down to also the exit polls, moral issues weren't that high up there. What was high up there was the economy and immigration.
Immigration is a moral issue. When you're allowing massive groups of people to violate the law, to get $10,000 cash in some cases, $2,200 a month that other people don't get, to be flown for free around the country, to receive services other people are no longer going to get more help than victims of a hurricane or homeless veterans, that is a moral issue, Micah.
For people who voted for Donald Trump. And so what I'm hearing led the way was pocketbooks, personally, and fear of other.
Fear of other. Okay. Let's break this apart for a second. One of the most effective ads that the president's team ran, President Trump, or President-elect again, Trump, was a $160 million ad pointing out that Kamala Harris stands with them while President Trump stands with us. Fear of the other. There's not a person watching this who fears people who are confused about their gender or defiant about it. Not a single person. They simply do not want to be forced to pretend. They simply do not want their kids taken from them and forcibly changed medically, irreversibly, harmfully. It's not fear. That's a rational decision. I'm not going to let you do this to my kids or other kids. Fear of the other. You're supporting a party that screamed fascism, Micah, while they themselves were shutting down speech, forcing people to take medication they didn't want, opening the border, using lawfare against their political enemies. There is a whole host of reasons that some people felt forced to vote for President Trump. None of it, in 99% of cases, having to do with melanin level.
And we let that decide how we move forward and who we voted for on the whole. And the second largest coalition of people at the booth, not terribly far behind in their solidarity, was white evangelical Christians who voted for Donald Trump.
So let's compare some things here about white evangelical Christians voting for President Trump. In Genesis, did God say anything about how he made mankind? Did he state any, let's say, bifurcation where there might be two sexes? Did he say that? Did he say made in his image? Did he say and refer to human beings as his masterpiece? He did. Is God pro free speech? He is. How do I know that? Because the Bible is words, and Jesus is sometimes referred to as the Word. Is the Democrat Party pro free speech? They're not. Are they pro Christian? Absolutely not. You have Christians put in prison for praying, where you have criminals let out of prison for sexually assaulting people, because keeping them in prison could harm them because they're confused about their gender. There's a whole host of reasons here, Doug. None of it, or pardon me, Micah, none of it having to do with melanin level.
Man whose character and actions, even many of his policies, go against everything I've learned about who Jesus was.
Joe Biden probably molested his daughter. That, according to her diary, where she talked about him coming into the shower with her and her going to bed and showering late at night so that would be prevented. We have two of his kids who are apparently sex addicts, and that can come about by being sexually oriented at a young age. You have a man who is openly grifting his position, has developed $50 million in net worth despite never having created a product nor provided a single service other than access. You have the attempt in this next period, if he had gotten the second term, you have the forcible taking of kids from their parents for medical, experimentation. This is with wrong sex hormones and wrong sex surgery. You had that. You had abortion at all costs. You had a presidential campaign running an ad advocating for men using more porn. You had a candidate who said that the name Jesus Christ did not belong at her rally when the phrase is Jesus is King. But yes, continue, Micah, to tell us about the grand plan you have to shame people who felt forced or even excited for voting for President Trump who happen to be evangelical Christians.
And how he wants us to act in the world to reflect him and his perfect love that casts out fear. So I'm feeling I'm feeling very despondent today, but also I'm feeling a little bit angry. A little bit angry that we haven't figured out how to do better yet. A little bit angry that a lot of those people who in 2020 said we got your back have abandoned us and gone against what we're trying to do in pursuing justice for people in this nation.
Justice, say, for instance, like reparations. Taking money from people who never held slaves, whose ancestors never held them, and giving it to people who never were slaves, nor were their ancestors. But not before that money is taken by Washington, D.C., with a whole staff of people hired, including their retirement accounts, their vacation time, and of course, their sex change surgeries. Got it. The Jesus I know is the Jesus of the Bible. Remember when he would petition government to go outsource the caring? Remember when he said that to his followers? It's really important that you lobby Rome and the Pharisees and the Sadducees to set up some systems to care for the Greek widows. Let's make sure that we create a taxation system that does that. That's exactly the thing Jesus didn't do, because that's the purview of Caesar. What did he say? Do it yourselves. So, Micah Smith, you're turning to government to be a pseudo-God. DEI is at best a pseudo-God. At worst, the way it's practiced in this country, it is an idol. And I dare say that you've made an idol of DEI and is keeping you apart from actually walking with Christ. And if you disagree with me, Micah, I'd love to have you on the program.